Veronica Trevino. She's a recent graduate here at the School of Medicine, where we're currently at right now. I reached out to her so she can explain to us, talk about her entire journey of becoming a doctor here in the RGV. I think it's like crazy awesome how she could tell us the beginning all the way to the end. So in case anybody out there is interested in joining the School of Medicine or entering the world of becoming a doctor, they can get some insight from someone firsthand. So first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I know we're talking a little bit off air about how it all started. You said it started 3 years old. So we can start there. How did it all come about? Maybe you know somebody who's a doctor and influenced you and stuff like that. So how did this whole entire crazy thing get started for you?
So I actually think that one of the coolest things about medicine and one of the weirdest things is how many paths someone can take to get here, and that the story and the journey for each one of us looks so incredibly different. So for me, that's why I told you, well, for me it started when I was 3, because that's really when it started and I never looked back. So when I was 3 years old, I went to my doctor, I went to my pediatrician, which is, you know, the doctor that takes care of little kids. And I told my parents, what does she do? And they're like, what do you mean, what does she do? She takes care of you. She's, you know, she makes sure you're healthy. And I was like, no, what is what she does called? What is her job? And they were like, oh, she's a doctor. She's your pediatrician. And I told them that's what I want to do when I grow up. And I thought it was so cool. I have this infatuation with babies and with little kids, and I thought it was so cool that she got to see babies and kids all day long and make them healthy and make sure they were growing up okay, and she got to call that a job. And so thinking that that was the coolest thing ever, it was like, what else in the world could possibly be this perfect as a job? So that's really when I decided that's what I'm going to be when I grow up.
A lot of us, a lot of people, I think, start off, especially at a young age in like elementary, middle school, we start off with like doctor, very broad career choices. When did it stick? Like, when did it become from just like, I'm sure hundreds and maybe millions and millions of people grow up saying, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, you know? But when did it become kind of like, I guess, like, not serious, but I guess serious, like, okay, this is kind of like what I'm going to end up doing.
Like,
when
not just a dream, but like a goal.
Not fading, exactly.
Yeah.
When did it become like, okay, I really want to do this?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think when you're little, everybody wants to be like a doctor or a firefighter. They're like the things that we see, the things that are on TV, and then you don't know all of these other careers that you can go into. So definitely. And I think that was really different, and why everyone is so proud now, because it's something that I've been saying since I was 3, you know, for 22 years. But I think there was many moments where it felt like it really cemented that this is what I wanted to do. The first one was when I was 11 years old. I was in 6th grade. My dad had a massive heart attack. And before that, he had spent like 2 weeks in the hospital, and he got all these tests run, and nothing, they couldn't find anything that was wrong with him. And we were watching him like slowly die, you know, because it was a horrible experience. And then they told him, you know, we can guarantee that you won't have a heart attack in the next 5 to 10 years. And the next Thursday, he was in the hospital with like chest pain and like pressure more than pain. And they told us that he was having a massive heart attack, and that they were gonna have to take him back to the OR and do like open heart surgery and all that. And I think it was at that moment, he's alive now, he's fine, thankfully. And that was, you know, I was 11, so 14 years ago. And it was that moment that I realized that when you're a doctor, it's not just the effect you have on your patient, but how many lives you can affect with the ripple effect of what you do, and how beautiful that is. You know, his surgeon and his cardiologist changed my life, and they don't even know who I am, you know? So it was really that moment that was cemented for me that this is the beauty that I want to achieve in life with what my career is dedicated to. And then in college, I feel like everybody hits a wall when they're doing medicine.
Yes.
And so college was my wall. And I would see these people who sat in the big lecture halls, like in the first 2 rows, and everyone tells you your grade is dependent on like what row you sit in. And I was definitely a middle row person. Yes. And I was like, oh my God, these kids are so smart. How in the world am I gonna compete with that? Like, they're just geniuses. They don't have to study. They know everything. They understand everything. They can teach it to you. Like, how? And how am I supposed to compete with that when there's 10 spots in medical school and there's a million of us applying?
Yes.
That's what it feels like.
Another reason why I think this is going to be such a great conversation, I guess, is because there's so many misconceptions about School of Medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So many, and right now we're, I guess, in a location here at UTRGV where many people come down from other cities, like out of state, and the competition gets even crazier. So I know we jumped into college, but is there anything that happened in high school? Did you go to a special high school as far as like dedicated to School of Medicine?
So I was planning to. My plan was, well, when I was little, I went to private Catholic school, went to IDEA for middle school, and then the plan was to jump to Med High.
Okay.
Because for me, that was the most obvious next step, right? If you want to go to med school, you're going to go to medical high school.
Yes.
And my principal from IDEA, Mr. Beard, sat down with me and my parents, and he explained to me why staying at IDEA was such a good decision. And I stayed for all of high school. So it wasn't a special school in the sense that it wasn't dedicated to medicine, but I truly believe that if I had left IDEA, I wouldn't have gotten here. I feel like IDEA is a very interesting high school when you compare it to other high schools. I feel like it's a completely different world. The support that you get at IDEA is like, your teachers are like your parents. Mm-hmm. They genuinely care about you the way that I've never seen in other schools or in public schools. Not that they're not there, it's just that not every single teacher cares about you like that in public school. And every single teacher cares about you like that at IDEA. And then I graduate and I still have this massive support. Mm-hmm. You know, like for applications for residency, which is specialty, which we'll get into later. But now, 2019, last year, I was applying and I sent my personal statement to my high school teachers to review. And I had graduated 7 years earlier. But I have them all on Facebook. They all are still around every time that I have a celebration or a party. They're invited. We still keep up, and I just don't see that happening at a lot of other high schools.
No, yeah, that's definitely, I think that's one of their specialties as far as being very hands-on with it, right? So take us to the day of, I guess, graduating high school, transitioning. For everybody listening that's maybe about to graduate high school, maybe in junior, senior year, what was that graduation day? Right after graduation, what did you do? What's the step like? Who do you call? Like, where do you apply?
So, because I went to IDEA, they're very focused on having us go to college, to a 4-year college and university. So the application process, we were very, not to say babied, but they held our hand throughout the entire process because they wanted us to get there. Yeah. Right, so we had all the instruction that we needed in order to get there. So I think the transition was very smooth for me because I didn't do it by myself, right? So after high school, obviously it's great, you party, you have nothing to do. Done. Yeah, exactly. And then that first summer, I did like an orientation. It was called Bronc Camp because it was Pan Am before it wasn't UTRGV. So it was UTPA, and we were Bronx still. That's how old I am. So
this happened like a year ago, so she's lying.
So I went to Bronc Camp, which was like 2 to 4 weeks of just socializing, and you got a mentor, so you didn't feel like you walked into college alone. So that was really, really neat. And then I started college, and I felt like everything really hit the fan. Because even though high school, immediately. Even though high school was really hard, my high school was academically super challenging, and they gave me everything I needed, like organization-wise, like all the skills that you need to succeed, I feel like they gave me. I was also used to a very strict structure, and college is whatever you want. You make your schedule, you can go you can go or not go. You can make one class at 8 a.m. and the other one at 8 p.m. and then you have all these hours to kill. So that was what was really difficult for me to try to balance. I remember
from the freedom, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. The freedom of college, even though you're home, and I was still living at home. So personal life, my freedom wasn't all that, but academically it was wild, the shift from a super strict school to having all the freedom I wanted. So that was hard to balance at first, and I joined 8,000 groups as an overeager freshman and got into looking at sororities and doing all this, and I was like, wait, I don't have time. I don't know how to manage my time well enough without someone telling me how to, so let me take a step back and reorganize my life. So that was really, really hard. So for incoming freshmen, I don't know, right now in the times of COVID, everything is different. But normally as an incoming freshman, I would say take it a step at a time, focus on your classes first, and then just start trickling in extracurriculars as you go, because they're important and you should be well balanced, but don't spread yourself too thin right away.
So this was freshman year college?
Oh yeah, this was my first semester.
Okay, so sophomore year, where are we at? Are we getting a little bit better?
Yeah,
or?
Sophomore year, I feel like I got my life together. I like got the handle of scheduling my classes. Also, I don't know if I can say this just so out there, but rate my professor. Definitely do that. Because I took some classes that, dear good Lord in heaven, I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to do well just because this teacher is so hard. He's so strict. So definitely learn to use that better my second year and got more on the role of getting your classes. I remember like registration night. Yeah, registration night was like hectic, and I feel like I would cry every semester because I didn't get the classes I wanted all at the times I wanted. And so I got the flow of all that better. So I started doing a lot of extracurriculars more seriously and being able to handle them because I knew the flow of things, and looking at sororities, which was really the big chunk of where my college experience came from.
Well, at least you did that, because some people full-blown skip the whole sorority groups and stuff, and they're like seniors in college, they're like, man, I didn't do anything. So at least you like kind of tried it.
Yeah.
So when did the School of Medicine come in? Like, when do you apply? Because I know we got a little bit into it earlier about how you realized, when did you realize the competition? Like, whoa, like.
Probably my sophomore year. I feel like as a freshman, everyone's kind of like, oh, what's going on? Yeah, figuring it out. And then my sophomore year was really cemented into more science classes. And that was when I realized in those science classes, all these people want to be doctors, and this is going to be super hard to achieve if all of these little brains are the ones that I'm applying against, you know? So that was really when I started to panic. And I think it was like my junior year, it was a registration night, those nights that I would always cry because I couldn't get into the right classes at the right times. And if I didn't take that class that semester, the world was going to fall apart. And I remember thinking, like registering for my classes and thinking, like, why am I trying so hard? I'm not going to make it. And I told my mom, I was living at home, I was like in tears, I was crying, and I was like, I can't do it. I'm not smart enough. Like, these kids are so smart. I'm not that smart.
And when was this? Like, it was a sophomore year, you were already applying to the program?
No, this
like
was just because I would get my grade back, and my entire life I had been an all-A student because I knew I wanted to be a doctor, so I would kill myself academically. So my whole life I had been all A's, and then I got to college and I'm taking like biochemistry and getting a B- or whatever, like an 80. And the people, like other people were getting like 97s, and I'm like, how? Like, I actually studied, so how did that happen? And how do I get there? And why am I not there? So all of these insecurities and these doubts were like flooding in, and it was somewhere either the last semester of sophomore year or the first semester of junior year that I was registering for classes, and I just completely broke down. And I told my mom I'm not gonna make it. And she was like, that's fine. You don't have to be a doctor. You have to get a degree. So if you don't wanna be a doctor, don't do it for me, don't do it for your dad, don't do it for anybody else. Do it because you wanna do it. And if you don't wanna do that, that's okay.
Just so people understand, like, what you're talking about, do you know some of the numbers, maybe statistically, of how big, competitive the program is? Like, maybe how many kids apply versus how many get in, just so everybody out there understands.
Yeah,
like, how
so
crazy it is.
For this school, specifically for my school, when I applied, we had 3,500 applications, 300 and some interviews, and then they accepted 50 of us. So
3,500?
Yeah, to 50.
To 50.
So
that's
that's
every year?
Yeah.
So 50 people get in.
50 people get in. Here, other med schools have bigger classes, but because this was a brand new school, we were taking it slow at the beginning.
Oh my God.
So 50. So from 3,000 plus to 50. And that's where my panic came through. And so when I hit that wall, I was like, okay, what else could I be happy doing? And I explored other avenues and thought, well, I could do this and I would be okay.
So you were actually thinking like,
oh yeah,
like
oh yeah. I was like, I could be a detective. And I was like, no, but to get there, I have to do criminal justice, and poli-sci I'm just not about, so no. So that was not okay. And then I was like, well, I can do something else medical related that's maybe not as competitive, but it's still in the field since it's what I like. And nothing that I explored was as fulfilling to me as the idea that I had had since I was 3 years old of being a pediatrician.
Yeah, I mean, it's an idea you were steaming on for 20
yeah,
years.
Exactly. So at that point, I was 20 years old, so I had had this idea for 17 years, and nothing could compete. And so after I had my breakdown and my meltdown, I told my mom, I was like, I'm not going to be happy doing anything else. I want to be a doctor. And she's like, okay,
so
then.
You hunkered down, and
yep.
How did that happen?
It was, I think the biggest part of it for me was just reeling in all my insecurities and putting them away and locking them away, because it's not that I didn't have what it takes to get in. It's that I was scared that I didn't. And it was that people were already talking about the MCAT, which is the exam to get into med school, when they were, sophomores, and I'm like, what is that? I don't even know what that is. And I really didn't have as much knowledge as everyone else. So it was just my insecurities that were getting in the way of me actually doing this. And I feel like that happens to people in any career, in any stage of life that they're in. It's very common to let your insecurities ruin things for you that you're perfectly capable of.
I always tell everybody that everybody's in different stages, and the thing is that we don't know what stage they're in.
Yeah.
And we compare our maybe beginning stage to their final stage.
Right.
They're already, a lot of those people that you were engaging with in classes and stuff, their parents could have been both doctors. They could have been coming from a family of all doctors. They already know exactly where they're going to go and stuff, and you're comparing yourself to that, so it made it a little bit, I guess, you didn't have the guidance. Exactly. From the beginning of oh, my mom's a doctor, my dad's a doctor, you're going to do this, you're going to take that.
Exactly.
So junior year comes.
Yeah, junior year comes, and I was buckled down.
Okay, I'm going to do it.
That's it.
I'm going to be a doctor. This is what I'm going to do.
That's it. There was no backup plan.
When do those 50, when do you apply to be the 50, or when does that happen?
So it depends.
Okay.
So that's what I was telling you at the very beginning, that there's different walks of life to get here. So there's traditional students, which are like me, and then there's non-trad students or non-traditional students, which are people who take a gap year or people who do other careers between college and med school. So it really just depends. So if you want to be completely traditional like me, you take your MCAT, which is the entrance exam, and you apply the summer between your junior and your senior year. So the fall of your senior year of college, you interview, and then by the end of your senior year, you know if you match to medical school or not. So it's pretty early because you're still trying to maneuver everything around college. It's not like you get to have senioritis in college all the time. Yes. Sometimes they're your hardest courses, and your most advanced courses are the end of your third and then your fourth year. Yeah, exactly. So it's difficult if you have a whole lot of really heavy courses going on, but that's just how it works. If you don't want to take a gap year, you do it in the summer. And then the summers, all of my summers, I did enrichment programs, or I don't even know what they're called. They're medical programs, usually at medical schools, that help you get ready for the MCAT, and they just kind of put your foot in the door for when you're applying. They already know who you are. So I did mine at UTMB in Galveston, which was my first choice because this one didn't exist. It doesn't exist, yeah. So way back then, 4, 5, 6 years ago, this school hadn't even been mentioned yet. There was rumors going around, but there was no year, there was nothing. So UTMB in Galveston was my first choice back then. And so I did all my summers there. So that already helped. And then the summer between my junior year and my senior year, I submitted my application. And then in October, I want to say, in the fall, I got a direct email from UTRGV that they had opened and they were accepting applications. After the deadline for submitting your application had closed, they sent personal emails and they were like, we're open, so send it directly, or send it now. And so I sent it literally 30 seconds after I got the email. I read the email and I sent it. I was like, this is where I want to go. I don't want to leave. I want to stay home. And I sent it and I got an interview right away.
How did that go? So you got the interview?
Yeah, so I got the interview fall of what I graduated 2016 with my bachelor's, so it was fall 2015? Yes, fall 2015. Got the interview. I went, I think, in November, and then by December 23rd, I got a phone call from the dean that I had pre-matched here, and I took it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was very fast. It was very fast, but it was the best thing ever because match day, when you find out where you're going to go to med school if you got accepted, is in the spring.
Okay.
So Christmas, all the holidays, Christmas, New Year's, whatever you celebrate very stressed out because you have no idea what's going to happen with your life.
So you applied to a bunch of medical schools all across the country.
So I didn't because I'm a Texas girl. I just touched the mic, I'm sorry. I didn't because I'm very homegrown and I like to be close to my family. Mm-hmm. And even moving to Dallas is like not ideal for me, or like El Paso that takes, 2 flights and 13-hour drive. Yes. No. So I applied to Texas and I made a huge mistake that I always tell people not to do not follow my footsteps, of applying to like 3 schools, which is absurd and nobody should ever do because your chances of getting in are already so small that why would you make them even smaller by not applying anywhere, So I made a mistake and I only applied to South Texas schools. So for me, it was extra good news because the chances of me getting in, period, were very slim by my own fault.
You're stressed.
Yeah, so getting that call, it was, I don't even remember. I got the call and then I got the letter, but on the 23rd, I got either the call or the letter, and it was right before Christmas. And it was the best Christmas, New Year's gift I could ever ask for in my life.
So is that when it's like official? Like, okay, I got into medical school.
Yeah, so usually like the official day, like I said, is in the spring. Mm-hmm. That's match. But if you pre-match, they're offering you a spot before they tell anybody else or they decide anybody else. Mm-hmm. So then when you go to the match part of it, you rank your pre-matches higher if you want to accept it. I see. So I got a call. So it was like a Sunday afternoon, like at 6 p.m. I was on the sofa with my parents. We were watching TV, and I got a phone call from Florida. And I was like, I'm not going to take this. It's from Florida. I don't know anybody in Florida. Right. So I let it go to voicemail. And then they actually left a voicemail. So I was like, okay, what's going on? So I heard the voicemail, and it was like, hi, this is Dean Fernandez from the UTRGV School of Medicine. I was just calling to tell you that we would love for you to be a part of the first class of the UTRGV School of Medicine. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I'm getting goosebumps again. I didn't know what to do with myself because this was like the life-changing call, and it was such a nonchalant, moment, a phone call from Florida. Yeah, I was completely caught off guard. It was the best ever. It was the best phone call of my life. I saved the voicemail. I still have it like as an MP3 somewhere, like in one of my files. It was fantastic. And I ran out and I went to like the bedroom to listen to the voicemail. So I ran out and I told my parents I got into medical school. And they were like, what? I was like, I don't know. The dean just left me a voicemail. I got into medical school. And it was the best feeling of my life.
The first year, too, of the UTRGV.
Yeah.
Crazy how everything just aligned for you, huh?
It was, that's just one of the things that my family and I are always so in awe of. How, like, I'm religious, I'm Catholic, so how, like, God placed everything so perfectly. Mm-hmm. The year that I graduated was the year that they opened. Like, the odds of all of that coming together, whether you think you feel like it's coincidence or God-given or whatever, but the way that things lined up could not have been more perfect for me.
I want to add a little bit to that because, sure, you're looking at her now. She's already a doctor. She's telling you the story. We've been, like, maybe talking for 15 minutes. You're probably thinking, like, easy for her to say, like, she got accepted, So can we talk a little bit about, I guess I listened to a podcast, and they talk a lot about luck versus hard work and luck, how much you think of it was luck, but can you talk about how you put yourself in position to even
get lucky?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't understand that. How did you put yourself in position to, I know you already talked about it, but to get that call, you know what I mean? You talked about straight A's through elementary, middle school, high school. It's not something that just They just call the random number and say, hey, you want to go to medical school?
No, it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and sacrifices and years that you give to it. So in high school, I was a 4.0. I graduated top 10% of my class. I did, NHS and cheerleading and dance and all these extracurricular groups that I can't even name to you anymore because there were so many, so that I could have a full application when I went to college. And then I decided to stay at Pan Am because of the financial burden for my parents. If I had gone elsewhere, even with scholarships, they were going to end up paying way more than they were going to pay here. So I stayed here. So once I, got accustomed to my situation here and at Pan Am, the first thing that I needed to get a hold of were my classes. So I did start, and I spread myself way too thin, and I retook Chemistry 1 because I had never taken chemistry before. My chemistry at IDEA, the teacher was having some medical issues, and so that class didn't go through the way it was supposed to. And so Chemistry 1 was like, as a chemistry minor, like there was no way that I did so poorly on Chemistry 1. Yes. So after I got all of my ducks in a row, I really honed in on having good academics, because everything else is extremely important, and I'll go into that, but academics is the knock on the door. No one's going to open the door if your GPA is a 2.0 for medicine, So really, really focusing on getting good grades no matter what. And if it took 6 hours of just sitting there and studying every day, then that's what I was going to do. And I think for me, it was really, really hard to see other people do it so easily. And it was frustrating to see other people be so good at something that I had to work so hard at. But that's just the way that I was, and that's the way that I learn and don't learn, and the way that I memorize things. And so that's the work that I had to put into it. And then I think what really set me apart from other applicants was how diverse my application was. So I did community service hours, like over 350, because I did volunteering at the hospital, and then I joined my sorority, which for any Greek organization, you have to do a lot of community service. So my sorority was really one of my biggest blessings in undergrad, because I got leadership experience, which is super important, and I didn't realize how important. I didn't realize how important it was going to be, and why people were so obsessed with leadership to be a doctor until, I got here and I realized a doctor is really the head of the team. Yes. You have to be a good leader, and not just a good, like, oh, you do that, you do this, but a true good leader that takes on responsibilities and realizes that I could not function without everybody else on the team. So my sorority was a great part of teaching me how to get molded into a good leader. Teaching me people skills meant, like, as a leadership position in a sorority, managing and handling 50 girls, we're girls. There's gonna be, some hiccups here and there. 50 dramatic personalities that we all love each other, but sometimes we want to rip each other's hair out. You learn a lot of little things, and the more involved you get and the more exposure you get to different situations, the more you're gonna learn, the more you're gonna grow as a person. Personally, professionally, there's so much growth when you put yourself out there, and I hated the idea of doing a leadership position, and I loved it so much at the end. It's just pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, I think, sometimes is necessary, most of the time is necessary, and is always helpful.
Did you start the community service? Or, like, where did somebody tell you,
so,
like, you need to do community service?
Yeah, so in high school, we were told you need to do community service to get into college. Okay. So I reached out to the community service person at DHR, and I was like, hi. They had no community service program before. So I was like, hi, I want to be a doctor. I'm a high school student. I want to do this for my application for college. And she was the sweetest person, and she helped me get set up and gave me hours, and there was no guidance for her either, because this was brand new for her, and it was a relatively new hospital at the time. Right, like in my lifetime, DHR was built, so it's very new compared to other hospitals in the valley. Right, and the community service portion of it was non-existent yet. So she really helped me get set up and get started doing that. So then when I went back in college, I already knew her. She already knew who I was. She already knew what I was working towards. So that was really easy for me to get into. But I think it's always scary to do shadowing, which is like when you follow a doctor, which is also super important to do volunteer work. It's scary to reach out to people that you don't know and to organizations that you don't know, but you have to do it.
That's exactly what I was gonna ask you right now is little things like that phone call, right? It's so small, but that picking up the phone and just, I'm super like that. I'm like, if I have a question, I'm like, somebody out there has to know this answer, right? Picking up the phone and dialing the hospital and just asking, like how you say, hey, I want to be a doctor. People are telling me I have to do community service.
Can you help me?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so like, can you talk a little bit about how high school students, maybe you had the fear in you of reaching out to people like that and maybe thinking like, I'm just a high school student, like who's gonna help me, or how, picking up the phone call and just asking. I'm sure you
definitely. No, it's super scary. I still think it's scary, and I've gone through all of it, so I completely understand and remember how I felt at 16 years old trying to get my foot in the door, and then in college trying to get my foot in the door again doing shadowing. It's very scary, but you just have to do it. You have to put yourself out there.
We're talking 16 years old, calling the hospital.
Yeah,
like,
calling an adult in the field that you want to work in that you're super intimidated by.
Exactly.
It's so scary.
These are all things that lead up to the first day of medical school,
Right.
Did you feel that pressure immediately, or did you go in there like, okay, I got this, and then like get like punched in the mouth and like,
oh no,
man,
I never go into anything feeling like I got this. I think that's like a personality trait of mine. I always go in like I am the only one here that has no idea what I'm doing.
I'm the opposite. I'll go in somewhere like, man, I got this. Like, how hard could this be? And then just be like punched in the face, and I'm just like, oh man, I guess it wasn't that easy.
No, that's a great personality trait to have. Like a fake it till you make it, because it ends up working, But no, I'm completely the opposite. I go in super intimidated. I go in like with my tail between my legs. I'm like,
Do you remember,
I don't know.
like those first few days of medical school of how you...
Oh yeah. I feel like up until your last year, or for me, there's something in med school called imposter syndrome, which is the feeling of I don't belong here. Like I fooled someone really, really well to give me the chance to be here because everybody here is better than me and I don't belong.
Why do you think you felt that? Why was it? Because
it's a very known phenomenon in medicine, and I think it's a lot of the pressures and a lot of the insecurities that we carry. Everyone is so talented in the medical field that you doubt, am I as talented? Am I as smart? Like, who did I fool to get me in here because these people are all geniuses, or these people are super personable? And there's different qualities that we all have, and I think it's very difficult when your qualities are different than the group of people that you're with to notice yours and give them the value that they deserve.
So you start medical school. I guess it's like the beginning of the end of the journey. The beginning though, right? So
the beginning,
yes.
Yeah.
How many years is that? Like how did you meet anybody that maybe helped you, or a professor or something? Like what took you from, I guess the insecurities never went away, but what took you from like, man, I don't know if I got this, to feeling okay,
like I got this, I can do it.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's kind of getting a little possible,
I think it starts like way, way back when. For me, it started mostly in college because I shadowed. So shadowing is when you follow someone around in the field that you want to be in. So for medicine, you shadow doctors. And that's also super scary because you're going up to a doctor and asking them, can I follow you around? I want to be a doctor.
And they can say like, no.
They can say no. And some people say no. And it's scary because of that. But most people, if they say no, you just have to brush it off. Like, that cannot bother you. And most of us, of course, I will say yes if someone asks me to shadow me because they want to be a doctor. I was you. Most doctors are like that. Not all of them. There's some bad apples, just like in everything else. There's some people with very strong personalities, or they feel like they're going to get too held behind or whatever. So some will say no. Most will say yes. So you just really have to step out of your comfort zone and do it. So doing that, I feel like I made really, really good connections. And I always tell people, start with the people you know. everybody has a doctor. Whether you had a pediatrician as a kid, you had to have had a pediatrician. So go to them. If not, if you didn't have a pediatrician, you had a family doctor who took care of you and your parents. You have to have had a doctor at some point in your life. So it's easier to approach them than just some random stranger.
So you early on knew the kind of doctor you wanted to be? Was there any doubt in that? Did you ever change that?
I think in med school there was doubt because we do clinical rotations, which is for 2 months, for 8 weeks. We basically do the work of that kind of doctor. So we have an OBGYN rotation and a psychiatry rotation and surgery. Cool. Right. It's super cool because you get to actually see what each field does, not just what they study and what their field is about, but what they do in reality, because they're two very different puzzle pieces to the career. So I loved all of them. And it's not that I loved pediatrics and babies and kids any less, it's just that I loved everything. So I had a moment where I was like, would I be happier doing surgery because I love it? And so it wasn't ever that I doubted my field, it's just that I love everything so much. How am I gonna be sure that I'm not gonna regret not being able to, deliver a baby ever again, you know? So I think everybody has a struggle with that. Even if you are set in what you want to do since you were 3 years old, if you like something else, you always have to test the waters and really evaluate what it is that you prefer. And so for me, it's just every single facet of pediatrics is perfect for me. I love the work, I love the lifestyle, I love the environment. Everything for me was perfect. And for every other rotation, even though I loved most of the facets, I didn't love them all. And that's really what helped me. But yeah, there was definitely a moment where I was like, I've wanted to do this since I was 3, but that doesn't mean that I have to do it right for the rest of my life just because I've thought that that's what I want to do. And that's what a lot of people struggle with. People like me who come into medical school already knowing what they want to do, that's what they struggle with. Letting go of the ideal of I want to be a pediatrician and not letting yourself be in love with another field and accepting that that's just what I like now. And so, yeah, a lot of people switch during medical school. A lot of people come into medical school not knowing what kind of doctor they want to be and just letting,
like a super popular one, like a one that's more popular than...
So I think at least for my class, when we started, emergency medicine was super popular. I think most of my class wanted to do emergency medicine. And obviously, it's very exciting. You can see why. And I think by the end, a lot of it shifts to more internal medicine. If you haven't really found your passion, internal medicine is great because you can subspecialize and do any organ you want after that.
Broad, so you get to...
It's very broad. So you can stay as internal medicine and be a hospitalist, or you can subspecialize and be an organ doctor. So a cardiologist, a GI, So I think most people shift to IM, and IM is really the most popular one, at least for my class, that people end up graduating as.
So at this point, when you get into medical school, how many of y'all are there?
So there's 50 when we started, 55 when we started.
Okay, and how does that, do you remember maybe the first couple mental breakdowns that you had? Maybe
There was so many.
I want to give them, the reason I asked, I want to give them a little taste of maybe what you went through as far as, because I live in an apartment complex down the street from campus, and I'm surrounded by med students. And there's a study lounge in our complex, and sometimes I'll be throwing out the trash at midnight or something, or be heading out for food in the middle of the night, and there's kids in there.
Yeah, we're always studying.
Or I'll be waking up early in the morning to go to the gym or work or something, and they're still in there. I'm like, wow, these. Can you give them a little taste of maybe the amount of work, the complexity of how many exams? Because I'm not a med student, so I probably could never. But what was it like? Maybe give them a little taste of what a semester was like from the beginning.
So there's a very popular saying that says learning in medical school is like trying to drink water from a fire hose. The power and the amount that's coming at you, it's impossible to absorb all that. It is impossible. And so one of our worst classes, we were calling them modules, but one of our worst ones was neurology. And I hadn't taken any neurology courses in college. To me, I knew that it was a brain and it had hemispheres.
It's the brain.
And that's it. That's all I knew about it. I didn't know there was pathways. I didn't know how it worked. I knew nothing. And it's almost inexplainable, the mental breakdowns that you have, because it's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of frustration. It's a little bit of sadness. It's a little bit of why am I so stupid? It's, and it's not, we all go through it. The smartest person in our class has these mental breakdowns. And it's frustrating because you can't absorb everything that you're being thrown. And you want to. If you get to this point in your career, you are pretty much kind of OCD or OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, because we learned that was different. And you're a perfectionist and you want to do everything right and you want to understand everything and you want to get good grades, and it's impossible to do everything. And then trying to balance all of that with adding an extra level now of your personal life, because the world doesn't stop just because you're in medical school. You have moments where you just cannot, you have nothing else to give. And so you have mental breakdowns.
So you talked about modules. How many of them are there? Like how many, what do you?
Too many, let me tell you.
So, 'cause I followed a medical student on Instagram, and I forgot the exact number, but it was an insane amount of quizzes in like 1 week. It was, the amount that she had said was like, and I think we were in summer. I think it was like, oh, I'm enjoying my summer.
Yeah, we don't have those.
Yeah.
So we have like blocks of time where we don't have class because we're studying for a national board examination for our license. Okay. So we don't get a summer. We have that chunk of time in the summer, but it's not a break. You have to study because this is the biggest exam of your life, and depending on the score of that, you can apply to some specialties and you're not going to make it in others. So there's no summer. So for us, it's a lot. The work never stops, and it's a lot all the time. I don't know exactly how many modules there are, but every medical school has a different program and a different way that they set up their classes. Ours was, we divided things by organ system, and then anatomy and pathology, which is like the things that shouldn't happen when things go wrong. Those two blocks were longitudinal, so they're all the time. So if we were in the cardiology block, we're learning about the heart and how it works. And then in pathology, we're learning about what happens when it doesn't work correctly, and then the anatomy of it all at the same time. So we would have the quizzes each week of how it works, like the mechanism of it, and then pathology would throw a quiz at you about how it doesn't work, and then anatomy you would go in there in the lab and have to identify things. So it was all at the same time. So you never stop studying because you always have something coming up. And that's why they say also the days are long but the years are short, because you spend hours studying for something, but it never stops. You study for this, it's over, you celebrate for like a day, and then you have to study for the next thing because you have something else going on.
And especially because you have 50 people who were like straight A students, 50 people who had never struggled. Well, I don't want to say struggled.
No, but compared, never struggled.
Just like breezing through high school and then getting to college. Just like, how was it seeing? Do people quit?
Oh, yeah.
People like drop out? How did the first, because you said it's 55 a year class,
yeah.
Right? What was the number like when?
39 of us graduated.
Okay.
So we lost that many people, and it's difficult. Everybody has different reasons why they didn't make it in the same amount of time or didn't make it at all.
Like those people can always go back, or how does it work?
Kind of. So we had people who just right after orientation were like, I can't handle it, bye. And so they left. And then we had people who had very heavy, very intense things happen in their family, and very big losses, and a lot of losses at the same time. And so that's really the hardest part about medical school, is trying to balance that with the rest of your life. And those really big things, those really big events, they have to have an effect on you. And there's no way, I mean, I'm sure there is a way, but it's very, very difficult to handle that and give that the time and the respect that it deserves, and still be able to try and drink water out of a fire hose.
Yes, at the same time.
So a lot of people, what they did was take a leave of absence, so take a break and tell admin, I need this year, the rest of the year, and I'll come back next year because I need to handle these things going on in my personal life. Some people failed a module and were held back to repeat it, and so they had to repeat the year. But I mean, there's no right way to do med school. Med school is 4 years, but really it's as many years as it takes. As long as you get to the finish line, it doesn't matter, because there's so many things, so many puzzle pieces that are different for all of us. And as long as you get there, it doesn't matter if it took you 4 years or if it took you the longest in history of medicine, as long as you were actually able to make it.
So year 1 checked off. We're in year 2 of medical school. How is the transition? How are things changing? Are you adjusting well?
Oh yeah, that's, I think, the best part about like going up grades in medical school is that you learn how you learn, and you learn what med school is.
Which is huge. I think what you just said right now is like probably so important. People need to understand how they learn, because I remember I didn't read books. I had maybe read 1 or 2 books and I was like 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that I knew. I've always been kind of obsessed with being like, I guess, status, I guess, has always been important to me. Being somebody who does something.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of broad. But I mean, now it's like very, very clear what I want to do. But at that age, I was like, man, I just want to be somebody who does something. And I had never read any type of books at all. But until when I found audiobooks, like I figured out the whole audio thing. Now I read, like, not exaggerating, almost a book a week.
Yeah.
Because I have it on my phone. I put it to like 1.5 speed. The guy's like, but I'm like, my brain's adjusting to the speed of the sound. And I look at the time, I'm like, okay, this is 11 hours. If I read an hour a day, it's really like an hour and a half because of the speed.
Right.
I'm just like, I could read a book a week. So understand, now I'm like, I have my bag there, I have like books, and it's not that I got any smarter or anything, it's just that I figured out.
You learned yourself.
I learned.
Yeah. So that's one of the hardest parts of the first year of med school, is obviously adapting and learning how you learn. Those are really the 2 biggest things. One of the hardest parts is adapting, because I had my interviewer put it in this way when I was interviewing for med school. She said, what's your hardest class in college? And I was taking advanced biochemistry, and I told her advanced biochemistry. She's like, medical school is like 15 advanced biochemistries at the same time per semester. Like 15 of your hardest classes at the same time. Mind you, you don't even take 15 classes in college at the same time. So I was taken aback by that. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, I've, learned time management skills, blah, blah, blah. And she was not kidding. It is so much. So adapting to how much you have to handle at the same time is one of the biggest parts. The second is learning how you learn. So I have come to learn that I am completely illiterate. If I read something, I'm a 25-year-old doctor that's completely illiterate. If I read something, I can guarantee you I am not going to know it by tomorrow. It's not going to stick.
Same.
And it was so frustrating. There's so many resources. There's too many resources for medical students to learn and to study. And it was so frustrating to not have them work for me. And you get so-and-so classmate telling you, oh, this book is great, this is the book you need to read, because their friend from the other med school, we didn't have upperclassmen, so their friend from the other med school said to do that, and then this friend said that friend said to do this, and there's 7 different books you can read, and I was like, none of this crap is working for me, what am I doing wrong? And then I found the magic of videos, and there's like video lessons that are available for med students, and that was my saving grace. It was like the aha light bulb moment that I was like, oh my God, I'm not stupid. I just didn't do it right for 20 years. It was the best moment to realize this actually works for me. And of course, you still forget things, but it was nothing like trying to read a book and knowing that I was going to forget it by tomorrow. This was great. And so now my ear can adapt to 3 times speed, and I can listen to the same thing 7 times because I'm doing it at 3 times speed, and I'm going to know that by the time the test comes around. So it was my saving grace. So really learning how you learn is so frustrating, and depending on how much you have, available to you, it takes so long, but it is the most important part. Because you need to do things, what does it say? Work smart, not hard. That's the saying? Yeah. You need to work best for you. If I sit here and dedicate 12 hours to something that is taking you 3 hours to do, I'm doing something wrong for
Something
myself.
wrong, yes.
So
I still remember when I finished my first book, like with the whole audiobook
Uh-huh.
thing, I was like, wow. I would always hear people like, and I would lie. I honestly, I would lie and be like, yeah, I read that, or like, yeah, but I just couldn't. I have ADHD, so there's just no way I can sit down and read a book. I just can't. And even if I read it, I'll start reading it, and then, like I finished.
Your
the page
mind
and just
is
be like,
elsewhere.
yes.
Yeah.
What did I just read? I still remember thinking like, wow, I finished a book. Like this is mind blowing to me. And I'm in the business school, and there's also nowhere near the competition of medical school, of course, but there is people who have their whole entire life figured out. They got
Yeah.
their planners, they got all this stuff, and I'm just like this ADHD kid trying to like, who's like college ain't for me type stuff. So it was horrible for me to adapt to, like, how are you guys doing this? Like, how,
Yeah.
how do you guys study this much?
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
a little bit about what I want to talk about is what tools did you use? I'm sure you had planners. I'm sure you had.
Oh, yeah.
You know, how did you study? What are some tips that you would give to maybe oncoming freshmen who are about to enter medical school? Because I know we're still in junior year of your journey. So what did you do to kind of put the pieces together? When would you study? Were you a night owl? Would you like wake up at 5 a.m. or
For med school or for college?
no, for medical school?
For med school, it just depended really, like on what was going on in my personal life at the time and what kind of module we were in at the time. So I remember nights in this building, actually, because this is our library, that I wouldn't leave here until 4 a.m. And I remember mornings that I would get here at 4 a.m.
Wow.
So it really just depended. And our classes started at 8, so I had 4 hours to just study by myself, or in the afternoon, if you really felt like you weren't super drained and you didn't need to go home and take a nap, just hit it and give it all you got until you ran out of gas. I think I didn't set up a schedule for myself because I did and I wouldn't stick to it.
Mm-hmm. And it would just like maybe disappoint you.
Right.
Yeah.
And then your morale hits the floor, and once your morale goes, everything else is going to go. So for me, it was really just feeling myself out and learning to discipline myself, really, because in college I had a great social life. I mean, I had a lot of classes and it was hard and I did everything that I had to do, but I also had enough time compared to med school to be social. And one of the hardest parts about doing medical school at home is that people feel like you're still here and available. And so all of my friends would call me and say like, oh, hey, let's go to Hillbillies. And I was like, I can't. And you start losing friends and people start getting offended. And it's trying to balance that with your work life and trying to study and really buckling down and saying, I can't do that. I want to do that, but I can't. And so right now, this is what I have to do. And teaching myself how to be better at discipline helped me feel myself out. Because if I told myself I'm going to be here every day at 4 a.m., it wasn't going to happen. But some days I was, because the night before, I just had nothing else to give by 10 p.m. So I had to go home and go to sleep. And then the next morning, then I would wake up at 4. But then maybe that day, I could keep going till 2 a.m. And so I didn't have to do that the next day. So it's really just whatever feels best for you at the time.
Staying away from like this robotic mentality of like, okay,
Yeah.
every day I'm gonna be there at 5 a.m. Every day I'm gonna do this. Every day I'm gonna do that.
Right. And if it works for you and you need the structure to stick to it, by all means, do it. But it's about doing what's best for you. Just because you've been a scheduler your whole life and I've been glued to my planner my entire life doesn't mean that I have to do it right now. If that's not working anymore, let go of it. It's not working. Adjust. And that was really what I would tell my best friend throughout this entire journey, especially because we were the first class and things were changing. They would pull the rug out from under us every day. So adapt or die. You need to make sure that you are able to adapt to whatever it is that's going on right now. Don't stick to some ideal you had. Don't stick to whatever you used to do if it's not working. If you see that things aren't working, just try to figure it out. Do something else.
How was it going through this with these 50 people from everywhere? Because this was the first year, but did y'all have out of town?
Yeah, we had out-of-towners, out-of-state people. It's interesting. I think you meet people with a lot of diverse backgrounds, and being from the Valley, I feel like we're being from the Valley, who stayed in the Valley and did, high school, college in the Valley, I felt like I was very sheltered and in a bubble, really, compared to other people. I've vacationed elsewhere. I've done, little summer programs elsewhere, but it's different than being on a journey for 4 years with people from completely different backgrounds. We have people that are immigrants from other countries, or their parents are immigrants from other countries and they're first generation kids here from other backgrounds other than Mexican, and people who are from Chicago, the other side of our country, and people from California with completely different backgrounds and ways that they think and ways that they approach things. And so it was very interesting and a very new and different dynamic for me being, in a group and with the Student Government Association and things with people who think so differently. And I think it helps you grow a lot. Like I said before, this is a period of growth, and everything that helps you grow professionally helps you grow personally too. And so it was a period of growth and of being more open-minded and seeing what else is out there without even leaving home. It was really nice to be able to learn so much and see so many different aspects and different ideas of things.
Let's talk about resources. So you're a medical student. Obviously, you have your books. Class gives you. Aside from that, what worked for you? What do you think took you to the next level as far as consuming information, understanding information, and then separating yourself from the people who thought they could do it, and then versus the people who actually graduated and did it? Was there any maybe professors or here on campus stuff that maybe you didn't realize was there for you? Tools, resources?
I think, so for me personally, I don't think I used any resources on campus, but I know my classmates did. So mental health, when you're in medical school, it's very important, but it's the last thing on your priority list when you're a student.
True.
You're trying to pass, you're trying to keep everybody else happy, and you are the last thing on your priority list. Taking care of yourself usually doesn't matter.
Do people end up getting sick and stuff?
People end up getting sick, people end up actually medically ill, and people end up having to take medications and whatever. But one of the biggest blessings for my class, I think, was the psychology and counseling that's offered at UTRGV undergrad. We have access to that too. And I don't know how much it's used in undergrad, I wouldn't know, but for us, I know a lot of my classmates used it. It's not that I didn't need to use it, I probably did, and it probably would have helped me a lot. I just didn't prioritize myself enough to actually do it. But the people who did have nothing but fantastic things to say, and it took them from a place of complete darkness. And there's a lot of facets of this process that are very difficult, and I think it's very easy to get depressed because of it, clinically depressed, and it took them from a place of this darkness to really being themselves again. And once you start feeling like yourself, you were way more productive and you do better. And so that was one resource at UTRGV that just changed lives in my class. Just educationally and academically, we had our lab that we don't have cadavers, so we don't have actual living people that are, I don't know how to explain this, but they're usually in formaldehyde, their bodies that are fresh, that are in formaldehyde. So ours are real people that have been plastinated. So they have plastic and they stay like that in that position of however the school bought them. And so it's super easy for us to go in there and just look at something real quick without having to do any work and cut any cadavers, for us to be able to learn the anatomy. Okay. So our anatomy professor was super, super helpful with having it open certain hours or opening it if we weren't allowed to be there alone for whatever reason. So that was super helpful, just being able to go in there and take as many hours as you needed to really learn that. And then we have a clinical portion of the School of Medicine, and our clinical site is great, and Dr. Goudreau, who runs that, was super available all the time to help us practice, so that was really, really helpful as well. As far as just learning things, I'm a video person, and I recommend that when you first start, you have to try everything. There's no way to learn how you learn without trying something. Yeah. The trick is to not stick to something that's not working. So for me, videos were my saving grace, but I had classmates that could not handle videos and had to read or they weren't going to learn it. And so it's really just about seeing your resources and trying each of them out. Don't stick to something that used to work that isn't working. Don't stick to something just because it's working for somebody else. Just try everything that's available to you. For med school, there's thousands. So reach out to as many people as you can, see what they liked, and things that work for all of us, like question banks. It doesn't matter who you are, how you learn, you have to do the question banks, like advice like that. Look for people who have gone through it and take advice, but take it with a grain of salt. Take it and apply it to how it works for you.
I like that because medical school, I'm not even in it, and I understand. I feel for you guys.
Thanks.
How was it transitioning to the final stages where it's like graduation's coming closer? Did you have any moments where, like, a really, really dark moment where you almost quit?
Yeah.
You yourself?
Yeah. So there was two parts to your question. So getting here, like to the end, to graduation is a few months away. I think just fourth year as a whole, it's so surreal. I cannot believe that I did that and that I was able to do that and that I made it.
Because it's happening so fast for you guys, right? Like,
yeah.
It's just like,
the days are long and the years are short. Like, it's happening, it's all coming to you a billion hours, like miles per hour. It's so hard to absorb everything. It's so hard to go through everything. And time flies because you're just trying to catch up. You're trying to play catch up. So time flies, the years fly. And it's utterly just surreal to feel like, oh my God,
it's happening.
It's done. I did it. I made it. And yeah, there was one moment. It was that summer that I talked about that we get time off to study for our biggest exam. That exam is called Step 1. So it's the United States USMLE Medical Licensing Examination, Step 1. So there's multiple of them. That one is the one that determines, depending on your score, what specialties you're allowed to practice in.
Okay.
So the hardest specialty to get into is dermatology. So you need a very high score. That's how that works. And so it's a lot of pressure. It is the most important exam of your life. And everything that you have ever sacrificed and ever given up and all of the hours that you studied are all dependent on this one exam.
Everything could end right.
Everything ends if you don't do well on that exam. And it's a lot of pressure. And so it's your whole life of pressure.
Yes.
Your whole life, the people who have helped you get here, the people who have sacrificed things for you, all of that is riding on your shoulders when you're studying for this exam. And it's frustrating because you study for it and then you sit down and take a practice exam and you don't do as well as you need to and want to do to get into the specialty that you want.
How many questions this exam is, or how did
it's I don't know how many questions it is anymore, but it's a 9-hour day, and it's 8 hours of exam, and you get 1 hour break that you can split up however you want.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it's 8 hours of you sitting there answering questions. Yeah. So we have step 1, step 2, and then step 3 is a 2-day event. So so it's very intense. And during this period, my life decided to fall apart. And it was the most important part of my academic life thus far. Like, there had been no moment in my career that was as important as that moment, and my life fell apart. And so 14 people died in the span of 4 months. And it was from people who were family, friends, and acquaintances to people who were extremely important in my life and people who molded me and shaped me and that I grew up idolizing and loving. So trying to handle that and trying to do this for the rest of my life at the same time was virtually impossible.
That's a lot of losses.
That it was a lot to try and process that I wasn't processing well at the time. And so I was not in a good place. I was not in a good position. It was the hardest moment of my life so far. And I almost quit. It wasn't because I didn't want to do this anymore, but it was because it was way too much to handle. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to drop out of med school, but it was a moment where I was like, I can't do all this at the same time. I need to at least take a break. And I wasn't getting the help that I was asking for professionally to be able to take time to deal with what was happening personally. And so it just all piled on, and I felt like I had to do everything by myself.
How did you beat that? How did you get through that? Because the reason I ask is because I know there's going to be someone watching this, either already depressed, already maybe lost mom, already lost dad, trying to start that, and maybe your answer could help them. How did you get through it, I guess?
Yeah, so I actually don't think that I've told this to many people, but there was one night where I was laying in bed and I couldn't fall asleep because I was already super depressed at this point, and I didn't realize that I was so depressed. There was one night that I was laying in bed and I just felt, there's no other way to describe this, but like a tsunami of just darkness and helplessness and hopelessness. And I remember sitting up and like trying to breathe and just feeling like I couldn't get myself together. And that was a moment that I realized, I think I need help. I can't do this by myself anymore. And so that's what I did. I got help, and it was a slow process. I got help, and then I asked for a break from medical school, which was short enough to where if I sacrificed study time later, I could catch up to my own graduating class.
Okay, so it wasn't going to affect your...
Right, so it didn't affect my track. I just gave myself less time to study for step 2 the next year.
But you were like, okay.
Which was worth it, because if I didn't sacrifice study time then, I knew that I could cut that time in half and really buckle down and get step 2 done, and it was going to be fine. But if I didn't give myself these weeks right now, I wasn't going to make it. Period. Professionally, in life, I just wasn't going to make it.
Medical school was not even...
Medical school was right. Medical school wasn't my priority at that point anymore. It had been, and at that point my life was in such shambles that medical school at that point didn't matter, even though it had been the only thing that had mattered for 23 years. So it was about recognizing where I was in life and what was best for me at that moment. And at that moment, I needed a little break. And I talked to some of the people in administration and the chair of pediatrics here at UTRGV, and they were very helpful in setting up this little break. And if I needed more time, then I would take the year and get off track. But right now I just wanted to start with, can I take this break and stay on track? And so that's what I did. And I got help, and I didn't feel like myself yet, but by the time that break ended, I felt like I could handle it again.
I think it's important that we're talking about that, because it's so easy to maybe stumble upon your Facebook or maybe stumble upon your Instagram and just be like, oh, look at her. And I think it's so cool that everybody's getting an inside look of how real medical school is. Depression, you're talking about people quitting, you're talking about maybe not just everything happening perfectly. You just said you had to actually press pause, get your life together, come back, and get it done, which I think is super cool. Now we're jumping into senior year, final year of medical school. You're looking around, has a lot of people quit at this point? Maybe you guys are already down to the 30-some that you mentioned?
Yeah, I don't think that we lost any more people our last year. I could be wrong, but it's more early on when things are shifting faster than you can find your footing. That's really when people tend to trickle, and when accidents happen, and when you just didn't get the grade you needed by a point and you have to stay behind.
Would you say that that's like maybe, well, I guess what I want to say is, like, do you think the entry part of medical school was like just crazy hard and then it kind of cruised a little bit?
Yeah.
I mean, of course it's still medical school.
It's still hard, and academically I think it gets more challenging. For example, the first 2 years are just classroom, and all you do is go to class and then study. That's it. And then the third year, you have clinical rotations. And so now you're having to work all these psychotic hours, and you still have to study because you still have exams. So you get more thrown on your plate, but you're also more prepared for it. And you've learned how you learn at this point. You're way more ready. So yeah, definitely the hardest part of med school is the beginning.
The reason I wanted to say that was because maybe I want people to know that maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh,
if
definitely.
They start the first year and they're like, this is medical school, I'm gonna be like this for 4 years, and it does change a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So you're graduating. You knew that you wanted to work. You're preparing for graduation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you already kind of getting the steps of how does it work to what hospital you're gonna go to, or do you have to apply, or how does that work?
You apply. You do it all over again. So you come out of medical school a doctor, but you can't do anything unless you have a specialty.
Okay.
There's no such thing as like a general doctor in this country. Other countries have it. We don't. You at least have to do something broad at the beginning. So you do the exact same process you did in college for med school, but now you do it in med school for residency.
Okay.
Residency is our specialty. It's our training years for what we're going to specialize in.
When you stay, I think I've seen it in movies or shows. Is this real, where you like stay at the hospital?
Forever and ever? Yeah, and you never go home?
Live
yeah.
there?
Yes. So now there's laws that don't let us work like 8 days straight like the previous generation did, but yes, they were crazy before, and they would stay
somewhere in the hospital.
We still do. They're call rooms because sometimes you have to sleep there. It's a whole, it's hard. Residency is probably the most work heavy part, even though all of it has been difficult. This is the amount of hours that you put into residency are just unreal. But so yes, so your last year of med school, you apply to residency, to the specialty you're going to go to.
Which is, just to name a few, your...
Pediatrics, mine, kids, surgery, OBGYN, family medicine, internal medicine, psychiatry, emergency.
Just some of those are the ones that people choose.
Yeah, so those are just some. I know I left out a few, but those are just some different kinds of doctors that you can be. And then you can subspecialize after that if you want and get more into just, if I want to be a pediatric cardiologist, so only take care of baby hearts, like kids' hearts, not adults, so stuff like that. So that you do your last year, and you apply again, and you go through interviews again, and then in the spring, ours was March 20th, we have match day. So again, it goes all into a system. Out of all of the interviews you had, you rank your top ones in order. The hospitals or the programs that you interviewed at ranks you, and then it goes into a system and you match somewhere.
Okay, I see.
And that's where you're going to be spending the next 3 to 5 years of your life, depending on how long your residency is. And so, after that, we graduate and then we start residency.
So residency, you said it could be 3 to 5 years?
It can probably be longer depending on the residency. But most general or more broad residencies are 3 years. So family medicine, internal medicine, pediatrics are all 3 years.
So we do the 4 years, the bachelor's.
Yeah.
And we do the 4 years of medical. That's 8. And then
then at least 3.
At least 3 of residency.
Right. So you're at 11.
11.
Right. Okay. So after high school, you have at least 11 more years to go. At least. And then I was traditional. So I graduated high school with credit, so I was able to graduate in 4 years, even with, doing whatever I wanted and arranging it however. So I did 4 of high school, 4 of college, and 4 of med school. If you're non-traditional and you take longer for college, or you studied something else and then had to put in more years to do the prereqs for med school, because you can be a music major and go to medical school. You just have to have taken the prerequisite courses like biology and blah, blah, blah. So you could have taken 7 years in college, or you could have taken gap years between high school and college and med school. So there's many, many, many walks of life that you can take to get to be a doctor. But yes, super traditionally, at least 11 years after high school.
Okay, so let's get into residency. So you start, it's day 1. What's it like?
I have no idea because we haven't started. So I will let you know.
Is this where we're at?
This is where we're at.
Okay.
So I just graduated
Awesome.
May 9th, and I start my residency June 17th.
How would you, everybody out there, it's 11 years. So we just talked about how fast everything goes, there's high schools, I think, that, like you said, med highs and stuff like that. So what's next? What's next for you as far as
me?
Residency, obviously, but do you plan on working in the Valley?
Oh, for sure.
Is that something that
no doubt, zero doubt in my mind. I mean, they say you make plans and God laughs, right? You never know what's going to happen. But my plan is to come back to the Valley. I'm very just homegrown. I like the Valley.
I love it.
I love it here. I love living here. I love everything about it. I love visiting other places, but as far as living, I love what the Valley has to offer for living. So I ranked, my first choice was the closest thing we have to the Valley for pediatrics, which is Corpus Christi, and it's Driscoll Children's Hospital. And I've been obsessed with them since I was little because they're the biggest children's hospital that's close to us. So when kids get really sick here, we send them to Driscoll.
Okay.
And so getting to be a doctor at Driscoll for me was like, that's the mecca of kids for the Valley, you know? So I get to be a doctor there now. So it's very surreal. Like 5-year-old me is just screaming in euphoria right now. It's just great. So I'm very, very excited. After that, I get to be at Driscoll for 3 years because mine's only 3 years long.
Only.
Yeah, it's only 3 years long. It's the short one. So it's only 3 years long to be a general pediatrician, which is what I think I want to do.
Is there still a little...
TBD. I'm not sure. If I fall in love with a subspecialty, then I might do a fellowship and add more years and subspecialize. But right now, I think I want to be a general pediatrician, which is, you know, the person you take your kids to for their shots, unfortunately, and for their checkups and when they get sick, when they get a cold or whatever. So I want to be that person, you know? Yeah, and I think it's really beautiful because you get to grow with the family. You know, you get to meet these new parents that are nervous about having a baby and have no idea how to be parents, and you get to see that family grow and change. And
second kid.
Yeah, or if they only have the one, just mature as a family and really develop. And so I think it's beautiful. So I think that that's what I'm going to end up doing. And after the 3 years of my training and residency at Driscoll and Corpus, I'm going to come home and do that here. Hopefully, private practice.
So what would you say, we already talked about the entire journey. What would be, I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that you would tell the younger version of yourself, but what would you say would be maybe if you were in a elevator talk, you were with another 14, 15-year-old interested in being a doctor, they want to follow your path, what would you say in that elevator to them as far as something that you think, maybe somebody didn't tell you, something that you had to figure out the hard way, or maybe a mentor shared that was like mind-blowing as far as that you think helped you in medical school? What would that message be to somebody?
I think just what I would tell my 14-year-old self or anybody in that position, as cliche as it sounds, do not give up. So many people, so many are going to tell you that you can't do it or that you're not the type to be able to do it, and you can. So don't sell yourself short, work hard, reach out even when it's scary, and believe in yourself because you can do it.
And compare yourself to, I would just say, like, compare yourself to all the other medical students that were killing it at the beginning, and you were kind of just figuring it out, but you figured it out. You know?
Right. At the end of the day, I made it anyway. So I think it's really about getting out of your own head and not selling yourself short. You can do it. You're here for a reason. If, now I realize I was here for a reason. If I was talking to a first-year medical student, that's what I would tell them. Don't think that you're not good enough. You're here for a reason. Someone saw something in you. See it in yourself. You can do it. If I was talking to a 14-year-old, don't give up. If this is what you want to do, you can absolutely do it. Work hard and believe in yourself.
Yeah, because you were one of those, I'd say that you were one of the, like you said, you were entering medical school and it wasn't so clear cut that you were going to make it at all, At any point it could have just fallen. So super cool conversation, man. I think we pretty much covered the entire journey and you're not done yet. So maybe
I know.
we can come back
in 3 years.
We could do this whole thing again and talk about how the end of residency was. So thank you for coming. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing your message with everybody out there. I'm sure that it'll help at least one person, and that's the goal of this podcast, is to, even if we can impact one person, one student out there, that's like my ultimate goal. So thank you for coming on, and I wish you luck in your residency, and hopefully see you in 3 years. Thank you for having me. And also, one of my biggest goals is mentorship. So absolutely anybody, if you're interested in being a doctor, if you don't know where to start, if you don't know who to reach out to, you can absolutely reach out to me, reach out to him. He will forward you to me. I am here to help anybody who wants to follow in these footsteps. It's hard enough as it is. You need someone to help you and hold your hand. You heard her, guys. So anything at all that you guys, any questions, if you're 11 watching this video.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, reach out to me. That's the entire purpose of this podcast, guys. I want to interview people from all kinds of walks of life, doing all kinds of different kinds of careers. I want to have them on the show and pretty much do what we just do, so you guys hopefully learn something. So we'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys for watching.